Last night, I dreamt I went to Manderley again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. I don't know. The beginning's actually quite long. I don't know if I want to read this whole thing.
Is that how we're gonna be getting? It's just like this is not as impactful as I wanted it to be.
It's very, very detailed and really nice. But that first line is definitely, I think, one of the most noticeable or one of the most recognizable first lines of a book. Last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. And both of these films do open with that line, so might as well open up the episode with it.
You really think those are as memorable as it was the best of times, it was the worst of times?
No, I think the best opening line ever to a book is "Call me Ishmael."
Oh, I actually disagree. I think it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It really sums up the times.
The
French Revolution, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it was in two different places, so.
Tale of Two Cities, yes.
Yes. I mean, I definitely think that that's also top 5, but for me, it's short and simple and memorable. Call me Ishmael.
Yeah.
You know, it grabs you. So, anyway, we're not talking about Moby Dick. We're not talking about A Tale of Two Cities. We are talking about the 1938, and it says it right here in my book, the unsurpassed modern masterpiece of romantic suspense, Rebecca, by Daphne Du Maurier. Adapted into a 1940 film by Alfred Hitchcock, and most recently a Netflix film by Ben Wheatley. We have lots to say, so why don't we just get to it? I'm Nicole.
And I'm Rolando.
And this is Remakes, Reboots, and Revivals.
An original podcast
about unoriginality. So, I am actually physically showing my copy of Rebecca to Rolando and our producer, who is also with us, Eddie Z.
What's up, Eddie? Hi.
Hello, guys.
So I will tell you guys that I have actually read this book. I read it a long time ago, so I did kind of need a refresher. But I've read it. Have you read it?
No. I was actually considering reading it for the podcast, but I saw the movies and I was just like, I'm good.
Yeah. As always happens. And Eddie, have you read Rebecca?
No, I didn't even know that this story existed.
Yeah, this is definitely one that I think as time goes by kind of fades just a little bit more and more from our kind of like at least our pop culture bubble, if you will.
Just proving that maybe its memorable first line isn't as memorable as you think it is. Because no one will ever forget it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Or Call Me Ishmael. Yeah.
Or Call Me Ishmael. Yeah, that's fair. Call Me Ishmael is pretty memorable.
Yeah, but A Tale of Two Cities is definitely. I think it's just a great like ooh, tell me more, you know. So that Charles Dickens. So actually, this book isn't that old. It's a 20th century book. It came out in 1938, and there's classes when you take like psychology or sociology classes in college. You always take a class called Race, Sex, and Class, right? Have you taken a class like that?
Wait, okay. I thought when you take classes, so you're talking about classes.
Yeah, you take. So
okay.
it's a college course. I should say course to differentiate.
No, my college course was urban anthropology.
Oh, interesting. So
I also did gender studies and racism, I think was my class.
Yeah, so my minor was women's studies.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I took the class race, sex,
I guess that's why you're so
class.
learned on feminist issues as opposed to me, who is just like, not.
Yeah, it was actually my minor originally was like creative writing, and then I took a women's studies class, and I loved my professor and everything I read so much that I changed it to women's studies.
Very nice. Yes.
Yeah. And one of the classes I did take was race, sex, and class. I think these are the 3 defining factors of like society and civilization that we can all relate to, and that we are all kind of like, we think in these ways. We judge people based on race, based on sex, and based on class.
Yes, very true. Which one do you think is the most prevalent? Which one do you think is probably not? I'm not saying the worst one. I think they're all bad in a way to judge. But which one do you think has the biggest effect? I have mine.
I think it's class.
Yeah, class. I would agree. I think class outranks the way people think about race.
I think
Worse.
Class also affects the way people think about
I
race.
agree. I don't disagree with that. Yeah, they're very much closely intertwined. Yeah.
Yes. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because this book deals with two of those issues. It doesn't really have time for race because, this is a book set in like the early 20th century England, and these are all like pretty well-off white people. It's set in the Cornish coast, and that's like all the way in the south and all the way in the west, right in the mid, like surrounded by the ocean of England.
Cornish?
Yeah, Cornwall.
Like where Cornish game hem?
And Cornish pasties that you've seen on the Great British Baking Show. Yeah.
Oh, don't talk about I'm very bummed out about the results of this week's Great British Bake Off.
I didn't see it yet, but
okay, well, I mean, no spoilers.
The only person I'm rooting for is Heron, so if Heron's off the show, I'm going to be devastated.
Her name is Hermione. Okay.
Hermine.
Hermine.
Well, despite the fact that I said her name wrong, I'm still rooting for her.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
yes,
don't tell me if she's off the show.
No spoilers.
Okay, cool.
But actually, I love everyone right now on the show, so that's why I'm just bummed out about it.
I don't like Dave, so I hope he's gone.
Which one's Dave? The one with the big butt?
Is he? I don't know.
He's a very bottom-heavy white guy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've never noticed that, but thank you for pointing that out.
Oh, now you will. That's the only thing.
Now
I see now. It's that ass. Like, damn, where you get that ass?
This is like for a white boy, a British white boy, no less.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the Cornish people.
Oh yeah, no. So this book does deal heavily with sex and with class. I don't want to talk about the plot too much when we're talking about the film, so let's just get the plot out of the way right now so that we can call back to it when we discuss the film.
Sure, okay? Because are both movies, you've read the book, so you may know, are both movies close enough to the plot?
In their own ways, they are.
Okay, good. All right, fine. So then, yeah, we can just summarize the plot.
Okay, so the main character of this book is unnamed, so we're gonna call her the main character, essentially.
Or I prefer not Rebecca, but like
so
in
not Rebecca,
like in The Devil Wears Prada, right? Like not. It was it like whatever I think
we should stick with the main character.
Whatever. I prefer not. I will call her as not Rebecca.
So our main character is a very, very young and pretty naive woman who is accompanying an older woman on her trip to Europe, which was very common back then.
Mrs. Van Hopper. And on this trip, she meets and she falls in love with a grumpy but very handsome, very rich, and much older man named Maxim de Winter. Whoa, he was supposed to be grumpy?
Are you kidding me?
Okay, we'll talk about that then.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Yes,
right,
in the book, he is quite grumpy, and he's significantly older, which is something that might not have come off in either adaptation.
What is wait? So what the hell is this young? I'm assuming she's supposed to be like hot, right? She's like a fine piece of ass.
Yeah, she's a young girl. She's in her early 20s. Maxim's in his 40s.
Oh, that's not that old. Okay, but
it's twice her age, right?
Like that song.
Like, okay. What's up?
I'm in love with a man nearly twice. It's about Rebecca now. Now it's all coming together.
There
nearly
we go.
Twice my age.
It's gonna play in this episode.
Yeah.
So he's very rich, and he is actually known to many people who are, where she's vacationing, to live in this mansion called Manderley. And everyone seems to be preoccupied. Everyone at Manderley, right, when she marries him and goes back to Manderley, everyone seems to be preoccupied with the memory of his newly deceased ex-wife, Rebecca.
Yeah. Probably because she has embroidered her R everywhere, apparently.
Yeah, and she's just everywhere.
That about?
Total narcissist, right?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, I would do the same thing. That's like my house right there. It's just like R everywhere.
And then R, yeah.
Yeah, just...
and in particular, the housekeeper, whose name is Mrs. Danvers, she is definitely devoted to the memory of Rebecca, so much so that she's immediately resentful of the main character and spends the next few months manipulating her and manipulating situations that she's pretty much trying to sabotage her relationship with Maxim, right?
I mean, it's very mean girl games she plays.
She does.
She is
Queen
bee.
Yes, she is. And then, meanwhile, the body of Rebecca is unexpectedly found, and we come to learn that Maxim, in fact, he hated her, said she was a manipulator, she was a cheater, all this shit, and he murdered her in cold blood. So, To sum it up, an investigation ensues. Maxim almost goes to jail, but evidence that she had cancer gets him off the hook. And meanwhile, Mrs. Danvers, she gets revenge on the fact that there will be no justice for Rebecca, and she burns down Manderley and she bounces.
This all sounds like a very Law and Order SVU plot.
Right?
It really does. I'm surprised they haven't they may have. There's so many episodes that they may have done an episode that's basically Rebecca. And
Rebecca shows up in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, the layperson just didn't know. It's just like, oh, this is a good episode.
Yeah.
So many twists and turns.
And also in the book, you kind of find out that the main character stays with Maxim, but now she's more so his caretaker because his health really deteriorates in terms of his mental health and whatnot.
Ew.
So this book really, they say it's a romantic suspense, but it's it's kind of like gothic romantic horror, right? Okay. So when we say romance, we don't mean the sense romance in like, oh, it's a love story. That's not what it's about. And I think some of these film adaptations may have gotten the term romance a little mixed up. These people are calling them out. The people in this book, they fucking suck. Okay, Maxim's not a good husband. This main character is so frustratingly stupid.
Well, hang on. Is she frustratingly stupid, or does the book imply that she is, as Kanye West would call her, a gold digger?
No, she's not.
She's not? How is that?
She wants him to love her.
This is ridiculous. First of all, I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm just saying it's just like, girl, it's okay to admit that you just want the money.
Yeah, she doesn't.
You don't have to stick by a man who murdered his wife for the love. You could just stick. It's totally okay to be here for the money.
Well, it's not even a romance because she's not there for the money, and she actually wants this love of this guy who's just never gonna love her, and it's not an admirable love story. It's not.
It's not.
It's actually more so, I think it lends itself more to the thriller because it is scary that these kind of relationships exist and shit like this happens all the time. So
I don't know how many relationships end with the murder of an ex-wife that gets found.
All the time. But so needless to say, Daphne Du Maurier was a very successful writer in her time. She actually wrote a short story that Hitchcock adapted into The Birds much later in his career. So he owes a lot to her. Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting. I didn't know that.
Yes. So she was very successful, and this book, when it came out in 1938, was a hit, right? So it was only a matter of time that they were going to adapt it into a film. So let's now segue into the film.
The film.
In 1939... the famous producer, David O. Selznick, you're familiar with him?
Yes, Selznick Pictures.
Yes. Selznick was one of the biggest producers of his day. He's still one of the most famous, I think. He was the person who brought Gone with the Wind to film, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a big hit. Right. And this was back in the day, too, when they didn't really, their film was still relatively new, so they didn't really know how to adapt film, so they just kind of, did literal 4-hour adaptations, which is what's wrong with Gone with the Wind nowadays, is it's like, no, make it a movie, don't make it literal adaptation, but whatever.
Are you saying you want a Gone with the Wind remake?
Well, they would have to do it right.
Do you think it would? I think it would probably work better as a series.
It probably would work better as a series, yeah.
Like a mini-series, you could probably break it up into 4 good chapters. And
I mean, as much as I'm I have a love-hate relationship with the 1939 one, I do want to see a remake.
Interesting. Ooh, I wonder if that's an unpopular opinion there. I want to see.
Oh no, people hate Gone with the Wind, so it's never gonna happen.
You think people hate Gone with the Wind?
People hate Gone with the Wind.
It's so beloved. I think maybe in your circle people hate Gone with the Wind. I think it's so beloved.
That it's one of those films that people are why do people it does have a reputation of being beloved, and yet people do call it overrated and they hate it. So.
I don't know. I like it. I'm not.
You liked it?
I think it's fine. I don't think so. I don't necessarily. I think it's long. I think I've seen it once. It's one of those movies that I've seen once. I was just it's good. I liked it, and I don't never have to see it again.
Yeah.
You know?
But
it is a very beautiful movie, I think. I mean, the costume design.
A lot was going for it, but they could have cut it down.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
But anyway, so Selznick had a lot of success at this time with that, and he wanted to adapt another famous book of the era, so he decided to take Daphne Du Maurier's Rebecca. He then hired and brought over from England this director who started his career here, Alfred Hitchcock. This was his first American film. He was under contract for David O. Selznick to make a couple of films. And I mean, for it to say that he started off his career in America, with a fucking smash hit is an understatement. Rebecca won Best Picture at the Oscars that year.
Yeah, which is interesting. I didn't know. I was always under the impression that Hitchcock never won an Oscar.
Hitchcock himself never. Well, I mean, the award went to David O. Selznick. He didn't.
Oh,
produce the
really? It
film.
doesn't go to Hitchcock.
Yeah, because when
He's
a film wins, Best Picture goes to producers, and he was never. At that time, at least, he wasn't producing.
I see. Okay, look at that. I learned something new, and you would think me being in the industry would know this, but obviously, I've never made an Oscar-winning film, so that's why.
Yeah, and Hitchcock later on won an honorary award. But he never, during, like, while he was active, he never won.
Yeah, I remember. No, I remember this because the joke when Suicide Squad won an Oscar is just like, Suicide Squad has more Oscars than Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
What a slap in the face.
Yeah, seriously. But anyway, so it was his first American film, and it stars Joan Fontaine, Laurence Olivier, who is the namesake for the awards that they give out in the theater world in England. You get an Olivier. And Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers.
Yes.
What the devil do you think you're doing?
Becca. But it's the picture, the one in the gallery. What is it? What have I done?
Go and take it off. Doesn't matter what you put on, anything will do. What are you standing there for? Didn't you hear what I said?
And can I just right off the bat say, like, how dreamy was Laurence Olivier as Mr. De Winter?
So you might then enjoy this. There are rumors that he was gay.
I heard rumors that he was bisexual.
He probably was bisexual. He was in a long-term relationship with Vivien Leigh from Gone with the Wind. But there are some reports that he was in a romantic relationship with Danny Kaye. Do you know who Danny Kaye is?
No clue.
You ever see the movie White Christmas?
No.
Okay. Then you won't know him. But he's just kind of like the anti Laurence Olivier. He's like a comedic American.
Yeah, just like I don't like Christmas music, I don't like Christmas movies usually.
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot that you just don't participate in stuff like that.
I love the Christmas season. I don't like media related around Christmas season.
Yeah,
that's really how
I'm the opposite.
Summarize it. Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so at Selznick's insistence, Rebecca is a very faithful adaptation, although we're in the era of the Hays Code, the production code, right? So some things do need to be changed. One thing was that Maxim could not have admitted to murder and get away with it, right?
But he did.
Well, so they kind of made it as that Maxim, even though he did, he was forced to, right? It was kind of like self-defense murder.
Right.
So they yes. They kind of like make it around. They overall make Maxim way more likable.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes.
Although, you know, when I was rewatching, I'm like, man, like their relationship does not age well. Like some of the things he says to her in the beginning is like, fuck you. Like, just don't let him talk to you like that. You know?
Oh, wait, like what? There were a couple. Oh, hang on, maybe in my notes I have those instances.
Where he's like, be a good little girl and like shit like
be a good little girl. Yeah, that one comes to mind. It's just like, dude, like, well, I mean, I guess back then it was probably okay, but I don't know.
And that's the thing. I was going to say that. So it doesn't age well when you're like a film watcher watching it, but it's way more faithful to their actual relationship in the book. So.
Oh, I remember. I have on my notes. It's like, never be 36 years old is what he says to her. I'm just like, what? Like, so what is she supposed like commit suicide with the moment she turns 36? It's just like, goodbye.
We just won't talk about age. Yeah.
He won't love me anymore. Just like, what kind of a thing is that to say? And that could not have flown well even back then. Because people age.
So so the book, the movie kind of was halfway between Maxim's just kind of like, you know, like a weird sexist guy, but he also kind of loves her, and it's kind of sweet, and it's kind of endearing, you know. So it like is leveling both of those things.
I don't know. I still don't see. To be honest, I from the get go, I did not understand this romance. I was just like, what is? Okay, I see what she sees in him, money, and he's handsome. But what the hell does he see in her? Because she showed him her sketches, and it's like the ugliest line drawing I've ever seen. I thought it was a joke.
God, that was so funny.
I was just like, what? Like
that was funny, yeah. That was funny.
And then he's just like, oh, but why'd you give me this hook nose? I'm like, yeah, because she's a bad artist.
Yeah.
Like, that's why.
There's so much to see in her, yeah. I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, it definitely was just companionship and whatnot. But, you know, it's interesting because the film begins really nice. It begins with a song tracking shot into Manderley while she's giving the narration. And then it goes immediately, like, we met in the French coast. You see the ocean, and then does this long pan up to him, and he's about to kill himself, right? At least it implies that he's about to do that. And she stops him, and that's how they meet. And he's like a dick to her. Like, what are you doing here? Get away. What are you saying? Like, he's being such a
well, yeah, because he wanted to kill himself. And like, it's just like, well, you ruined the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, now the moment's passed.
We don't condone suicide here, guys. FYI.
And so it's interesting filmmaking, right? Immediately, you kind of also see how Hitchcock is taking some liberties with adapting it into film, which is nice.
Oh, I mean, yeah. Oh, I will say the camera work in this movie is quite exquisite.
Yes. He doesn't do a lot of tracking shots further in his career, but, and like, obviously now when we watch it, we know that it's like a little set that they're like, and these are like, props and little people in cars that are being pushed, but it still really works.
No, yeah, I agree.
And also one of the other big changes... Oh, yeah, I was going to say the use of smoke and, like, the fogginess in this film, especially when they get to Manderley, it's beautiful. Another big change is that Mrs. Danvers in this movie, right? She's obviously the villain in every single version, in the book and in the films. But in this film, and I wanted to get your opinion on this.
She's a lesbian?
It kind of seems like she's a lesbian, yes.
Oh, yeah. I was just... I was reading that. I was like, bitch is in love with fucking... Rebecca, right? Like, she's clearly the way she rubbed her clothing on her. I was just like, girl, you can't hide it.
So
Keep
in the
it
book,
in your pants.
It seems like Mrs. Danvers is way older, and that she had like a motherly thing for Rebecca. But in this, she's a lot younger, and it definitely it's kind of like queer coding.
It is queer coding, and just like. I guess we should put this earlier in the episode, but spoiler alert, guys, on both these films.
It's a given that it's a spoiler.
But she will die, and is one of those kill the gay tropes. You know? Yeah, for sure. So it's just like
she doesn't die in the book. They kill her in this, and I think it's 1940. If they're going to imply she's gay, she has to die. Like, she literally has to.
But she's also the bad guy, right? It's okay for the bad guy to die.
Yeah, two things. She's a villain and she's gay. But if you're gay, you're automatically the villain.
I mean, just like in real world.
Yeah, seriously. So tell me your thoughts about this movie. What did you think? Story-wise?
Yeah, I never saw this. I actually was excited when I found out it was Alfred Hitchcock. And I learned it was his first. I didn't know it was his first American movie, so it was his first American movie, not his first movie. Period.
No, not his first.
Okay, so I thought it was his first movie. Period. However, wonderful film. I liked it. I found myself liking it more than the soon to be version, the Netflix, right? Oh yeah. But I thought it had great performances. Some of the editing was also really superb. Like, for example, one of the ones that I like was the courtroom scene where. There's just like this constant cutting back and forth, but like as you're cutting, you're also getting closer and closer to like to Mr. De Winter and like the person interrogating him, right? Like it's just like it's those moments where you just realize like, God, Alfred Hitchcock is such a fucking master at this craft.
Yeah.
And it I don't think I've ever seen a bad Hitchcock movie, and this just like kind of just was one of those.
100%, I agree with you. It's kind of crazy how well his work holds up, and it sucks because we know the stories that Tippi Hedren has told about him. So in cancel culture, we kind of can't be giving him too much praise, but as a filmmaker, not as a dude, he's pretty good at what he does. Yeah. I will say, I do like his films, and I would not put Rebecca in my top 5, nor would I probably put it in my top 10 of favorite Hitchcock films. But I do think the sequence of Mrs. Danvers trying to convince the main character to kill herself is probably one of the best scenes I've seen in a Hitchcock film ever.
Why don't you go? Why don't you leave Manderley? He doesn't need you. He's got his memories. He doesn't love you. He wants to be alone again with her. You've nothing to stay for. You've nothing to live for, really, have you? Look down there. It's easy, isn't it? Why don't you? Why don't you? Go on. Go on. Don't be afraid.
That is, yes, I agree with you. That's another good scene.
I mean, it's just so well done with her being like, why don't you?
And you really do see the sinisterness in Mrs. Danvers.
Yes, you do.
Right, because I think it's up until that point, you're just like, is she? Maybe we're reading too much into it. Maybe Rebecca is just stupid and she just like doesn't know. How to Be a Lady.
Rebecca or the main character?
I'm
or
sorry, not Rebecca. Not Rebecca. Is I think that's also what's enjoyable about this movie. There's kind of like these twists and turns. I think for me, one of the less effective moments was probably the sequence where Maxim, for example, admits about what he did. That one didn't have as much of an impact on me, but also at the same time, though, in retrospect, he does play, and this we'll talk about obviously for the next one. Like he does play this. He's much more sympathetic here. He is a much more sympathetic Maxim than our next version. But it's still one of those scenes that I don't know if necessarily worked well for me. Oh wait, no, I take it back. No, I take it back. I did like the scene. I remember now when he's telling the story, the camera does this panning, right, where you kind of like seeing the action, but there's no one there, so you're just imagining it all in your head.
Yeah.
I remember now. Again, this is where I think I paused the movie to tell Eddie, just like, this is where you see fucking Hitchcock's like mastery in this craft, right? Like he knows. It's just like, well, they're ghosts. He's literally recounting the story. You're not going to see. I love it because you're not doing a flashback. You're just doing something much more clever. And I don't know if I used to have a blog, but like in my blog, I always used to complain about flashbacks. Like just test flashbacks in screenwriting.
Yeah, and it's not even.
I was once a script reader a long time ago, and one of the scripts I read, there was a flashback within a flashback, and I was just like, die as a writer, just like give up, like don't ever do this.
Flashback within a flashback.
It was a flashback within a flashback.
Yeah, that's not good. Well, technically, this whole story is technically a flashback, although we never flash forward, so it doesn't really count for that. So, and the film ends with.
Wait, how is it a flashback?
Because it says, "I dreamt last night I went to Manderley again." So, the way she's telling us,
so this is after got burnt to a crisp.
Yes.
Okay, see.
So the main character, she's a pushover, right? She's naive. I think she's kind of stupid. And she's what's that word? She lets things happen, right?
Oh, so she's very passive.
She's very passive.
1,000,000%. But hang on. In her defense, though, I think she's actually. There's a certain point in this movie where when she says like, "Get rid of all of Mrs. De Winter's things. I am the new Mrs. De Winters." I think that's the moment where you kind of see her start growing a backbone, and that's when Mrs. Danvers' like claws show even more, right? That's when 100%. Mrs. Danvers is just like, and now I have to strike, because other than before that, she was pretty demure. Like I still don't know what the hell not Rebecca and Mr. De Winter saw in each other, but I think it was in that moment where she started to grow a backbone and stuff, and so she becomes less passive in my opinion, but she was overall still a pretty passive character.
100%. I mean, in the book and then in the films, it's when she starts realizing the truth about Rebecca and stuff that she's able to be like, well, fuck this, I'm not going to live in her shadow. And then she grows a backbone and she starts being more active for herself. But then it also ends up all being kind of like to prove Maxim's innocent. She's still like devoted to this guy who that she doesn't even really have a real relationship with. In the book, I read it when I was really young, and I think I was assigned it in high school, and that's because, there's no sex scenes or anything like that in this book. They don't really have a romance. And yet she's devoted to him, right? But in this film, in the 1940 film, there is somewhat of a romance. And I think that that's kind of ruins what her story is about in both film adaptations. But in this one, because it's also kind of like he doesn't reciprocate as much as she would want him to.
Well, yeah, I just don't. Here's what you're saying, basically. She's a slam piece, but there's no slamming going on, so it's just like, what do they see in each other? This is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, well, why? Well, also, why does that give her motivation if there's no slamming to be had?
Because it's the money. I know that there's not written here that like she's after the money and stuff, but like that is the only thing that I could think of right now. It's just like you're living in this manner.
You're coming up with that, and I'll accept that because I guess it shouldn't even be said. But to me, there is no reason for her to be motivated by this relationship and at least in the book. In the movie, it makes sense why she's motivated. by the relationship.
In the movie, because she's like living. I mean, she was the companion of Mrs. Grasshopper and Van Hop. I'm sorry. Okay.
I thought that was a nickname.
I think he's talking about the children's version of Rebecca.
The picture book.
Yeah. So Mrs. Van Hopper, she was I don't know, just like I don't know. I guess I see why she would want to run off with Mr. Maxim. I don't know. I feel like maybe it's not outright there, but like money talks, girl.
Money does talk, yeah.
So,
all right, I definitely will accept that. But yeah, so the film ends with Manderley being burnt to the ground by Mrs. Danvers, who was trying to kill the main character, but instead it backfired, and the house caves down on her. Well, so there's very much
it was suicidal,
justice.
Wasn't it? It was a little
kind
bit
of. Well, the way she was kind of like trying to avoid the flames. Do you think it was suicidal? Because like remember, there's that really nice shot with her of the candle looking at her sleeping, and then she turns around like, I know what I'm gonna do.
Right, but I guess it's just like, how the hell did not Rebecca escape and not Mrs. Danvers? I feel like Mrs. Danvers would have had the head start.
It's a huge house. Yeah, I guess
Miss Danvers, she runs the house. She should know how to get out.
I feel like,
I don't know.
To me, it was kind of implied she was trapped.
Yeah, or maybe she just wanted to be consumed, and I think, and maybe a moment realizing, oh, maybe I should have done this another way.
Yeah.
Just true, like maybe fire is a little too hot.
Well, I thought it was just
maybe drowning would be better.
So interesting you should say that. But I kind of took it more like she's dying with the memory of Rebecca because she was in love with Rebecca.
Yeah, and the camera zooms into the R on the pillow. It could
be.
And because it's really implied that she is gay, to me it was like, oh no, they're just killing her. They're downright punishing her for.
They're not killing her. They're sending her right to hell. The flames of hell.
The flames. Yeah. I thought though it would have been really cool if there was like an Arrested Development kind of like zoom into her face where she's like, I made a huge mistake.
Yeah, right.
But
Mrs. Danvers would never admit to a mistake though.
Yeah,
she just would not.
But overall, I mean, it's not like it's not my favorite Hitchcock film, but it's a pretty interesting film. I think that story-wise, it's okay, but film-wise, it's worth checking out. And although they did make some changes to the story because they had to,
right?
I think they did an overall really nice, faithful job to it. But fans of the novel were probably itching for a movie that kind of got things right a little bit more than the 1941. And so Netflix commissioned a new film to be done of Rebecca, and whether or not fans got that is to be discussed right now by Rolando and I.
May I present Mrs. Danvers?
Welcome to Manderley.
Never seen a house like this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you'd been a lady's maid.
This is all very new to me.
Oh, I'm sure you won't disappoint him, madam, if that's your concern. We did a lot of entertaining when the late Mrs. De Winter was alive.
You can talk to me about her. I have no secrets from you.
All marriages have their secrets.
Netflix loves their stories about ghosts haunting manors. That is my takeaway.
So great that you should say that because I'm going to bring that right back up soon. But so 2020, directed by Ben Wheatley. Do we know what else he's done? Let's look.
I don't want to know what else he's done.
Oh,
a spoiler for there's my review for this movie already, guys.
Wow, yeah. He hasn't done films that are worth mentioning. I'll say that.
Oh, burn.
And there was one point when I was beginning this film where I was like, I wonder if this was done by a woman, and then there was one point where I was like, no, this was made by a man. Like,
what was that point?
So clear. It was very early on in the film, when they were still in Europe, and I think it was when they had sex for the first time that I was like, this is a man.
Oh, it does hold on the sex scene a lot longer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So about this movie, it's a period piece, right?
It's a period piece.
You would assume, given the chance, you would just modernize the story just a little because you could. There's no reason you can't bring the story into the present day. I think maybe the legal system changes a little bit and the politics, but class hasn't changed. The mega wealthy hasn't changed. So I think it'd be fine.
Yeah.
But no, they chose to keep this into its time period, which is 1930s, I think, is where they are set in this movie.
Yeah.
All right, so it has that Great Gatsby-ish vibe. I don't know. I feel like, well, the reason I think they dress so garish.
Okay.
I don't know. So I can't say for sure if that was the fashion back then, but it didn't feel like it, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, yeah, we're not upper class English people of the 1930s, so
it's true. I am not, so I can't speak to that. But
can't
no,
either.
I don't know. I also felt like the way they acted, especially in the first act, when they right before not Rebecca and Maxim got married, like they felt a lot more contemporary though, didn't they?
100%.
Like they were just like talking like almost like normal people would talk nowadays.
Yes.
Just flaunting their relationship in public. It's just like, how of course Miss Hopper's gonna find out that you guys have been sleeping with each other because you're not hiding it. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where like he's basically groping her in front of like all the people on the beach.
Yeah, seriously. That was the one thing that I was gonna I was like, okay, so what are they going to do? Is this going to be a modern retelling or is this going to be a faithful adaptation period piece? And the answer is it's kind of both. It's like it's set in 1938 and yet these people are acting like it's 2020. Mm-hmm. Like the moment there was a sex scene, I was like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Because
I don't know. The sex
there ain't
scene
no love in this book.
Oh, right. That's right.
But it exists, period. You know?
I see. That's true. I don't think a lady of the 1930s would put out. I don't know. I don't know.
And
People
even
had
if she would.
inhibitions.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, well, so back in the day, you know, even if you gave like a woman a kiss on the cheek in public, it was like,
right. And they were constantly just making out.
Yeah. So it's just did you guys do your research? Did you read the book? But so also performances wise, you know, it's kind of like it's a little wonky. So let's talk about some of the performances. The main character is played by Lily James, who was okay.
She was fine, I guess, but I could not stand her eyebrows, I guess. I don't know why. They annoyed me a little. They were a little too archy, I think.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
So obvious because they were just a different color from her hair.
Yes! Also, that drives me crazy sometimes. It's just like, what? Why even bother changing your hair?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Or just, like, lighten them up.
Yeah, something like that. It annoyed me.
They had the technology.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
And then there's Kristen Scott Thomas, who plays Mrs. Danvers, who was good.
No, I think she might be the only highlight of this movie.
For sure. Because then there's Armie Hammer as Maxim De Winter, who is so terrible. And I don't know if it's the direction, and I don't know if it's the way that they kind of were trying to make him sympathetic and trying to stay faithful to him, but Maxim's character was awful.
So why do you think this Maxim was awful?
Because so that's back to what I said too about like, they're going like half and half with like making it who he was in the book and trying to make him more likable. There's times where he's so grumpy and he's just so like devoid of real emotions that it's like, oh, there's too many identical beats of him being like a detached, cold jerk to her. Like, where's the romance? But then he's, you know, fucking her and like wooing her on the side. So it's like, for me as a viewer, I don't see the qualities adding up as to why Maxim's a likable character. I also think he's trying so hard to like maintain his English accent that he's like making his performance a little bit more subtle.
Is
and
Armie Hammer
for him? He's American.
He's American?
I'm pretty sure he is.
I don't know. I don't know much about Armie Hammer except Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I've seen of his.
You never saw like The Social Network?
No, I've never seen The Social Network.
Oh.
I don't care about Mark Zuckerberg, so I just didn't care to see that movie.
I saw it because it was David Fincher, and I like David Fincher.
Yeah. A lot of people recommend it, and I'm just like, maybe eventually, but
yeah.
now,
I mean, yeah, you can live your life without seeing it. It's fine.
Thank you.
But
I'm glad I didn't know that I can live my life without seeing Social Network. No, I feel so many people tell me it's just like, go check it out. I'm just like, I don't wanna. Because this happened also. I was already like this. I feel the movie came out during the prime of like Facebook already. Right? Well, now we might be in the prime right now, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it was a rising thing. I was just like, did this merit a movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me, did it merit a movie?
He was in Sorry to Bother You.
What is he?
He was in Sorry to Bother You.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't Sorry to Bother You. He was good in that movie. Okay, yeah. So I've seen some Armie Hammer stuff. So yeah, he's usually not this flat, but I think it depends on the role he's given. This might not have been the right role for him.
I don't know. I felt like I got this detached. Like I got the character from him of being kind of detached, not knowing where you stand with him, definitely closed off, and tortured. But you did definitely was good because I did not understand why. I assumed he was tortured for one reason, and then you learn it's for something else.
Okay, no, I think that's fair. I think maybe for me the reason is because both him and not Rebecca, they looked about the same age. They didn't look that much difference in age, where it was just kind of just like, where with Laurence Olivier, he looked so dapper. He looked so like he looked older than her. But he was just like I think sexier. I don't know why, because Armie Hammer's a very handsome guy. But they threw him in these like awful suits that I was just like, what?
I don't know.
I
like the suits.
I could not stand that yellow suit that he was always wearing.
I think it was the color grading of the film too. They like saturated everything.
Yes,
Maybe.
yes.
I think,
especially at the beginning too, how everything was super bright.
Yeah, it was
in the
annoying.
beginning.
I mean,
it was your idea of like that contrast. So the beginning of like so
color
they're out like in the French Riviera. It's so bright. It's so. It's so gay. It's lovely. Let's experiment, that kind of thing. I grab your boobs in the beach, and then they come to
the darkness of thing. Yeah,
the heaviness, the shadow of Rebecca over.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, I think there's one of those instances where you just see like digital filmmaking.
Yes, that too, for sure.
You know, like it catches. It's just like I don't know. It sounds so snobbish to say, but like you can just tell the difference, and I don't know. I'm starting to really just not really like digital filmmaking.
Oh yeah, no.
Because you could also make digital filmmaking and still like give it the not grading, but like you could still achieve a cinematic quality that doesn't feel fake.
Yeah,
and this one,
you can.
This one felt fake.
It definitely did.
Yeah.
Overall, he was just like he was overall very unlikable. Like Laurence Olivier felt more condescending to her, and yet I liked him more than I did the Armie Hammer. He just was totally.
Yes, I mean you did get the sense in the earlier movie you get the sense of like their age difference.
Yeah,
and the way he treats her, like, oh, you're being like a little girl. Look how you're wearing your hair. Who make these comments and.
Seriously.
But then in the remake of it, it's like, I mean, you feel like he's older because he's so sophisticated, or he presents this air of sophistication and money.
Yeah,
and then she's all nervous around him. So that's like, that's when you get this sense of like the age difference. But visually, not so much.
Yeah,
oh my god,
sure. Not so much.
The 2021, it felt like he trapped her. He was like, I'm gonna be really nice and really this, and then the moment they get to Manderley, he just completely shuts off. And becomes like a dick. Like it literally felt like a trap.
And I don't know. He was sometimes dickish around like, anytime like she brought up like stuff that maybe brought up the past, he'd shut down.
But he
real quick.
didn't communicate anything to her.
Yes.
It was just like
here's the first warning sign, I think, when she ordered the oysters, right? It's just like, dude, French. Why are you not telling her? Just like, oh, you're ordering oysters. Are you sure that's what you want?
Yeah, seriously.
You didn't have to let her eat those. I mean,
okay, wait a minute.
I'm not going to complain about oysters for breakfast.
In his defense, I think he did not want to embarrass her like everyone else does, especially Miss Hopper. Miss Hopper delights in this little moment where she gets to be superior to her.
And Miss Hopper was...
That not wanting to embarrass her went out the window in fucking Manderley.
Yes. You have no idea. That's awesome. Yes.
Mrs. Hopper. Yeah.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Mrs. Hopper, right? Because she only shows up for like the first 10 minutes of the movie, but she is a raging bitch towards...
They made her way more of a bitch. Like that scene where she's like...
talking behind her back, and she could hear her? It's just like, what?
Yeah.
What?
So this movie actually kind of tries to play class a little bit more, right? The class divide between her and kind of like everyone else is really strong in this movie. And like it makes it very uncomfortable because also in this movie she has a little less of a spine.
Oh no! Like all right, so we thought that the other not Rebecca was passive, this one is just like wallpaper.
Seriously,
like basically through the very end. Because even when they try to make her like an active character, somehow, some way, she's still the most passive thing to happen in this plot.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Lily James's performance here, because I will blame the writing, but like, and possibly direction. So what went wrong with this not Rebecca here? I think my first complaint is that she was always they told her it's just like, you have to be scared of everything. You're like a mouse.
Well,
she's very mousy.
Well, we also come from like the past. Like this is a young woman who has no family. She's totally alone. She is basically on the compassion of Mrs. Hopper, who took her in as, I don't know what you call them. What's the official title?
Companions, I think is what she kept
like
calling
her companion.
Yeah.
That job. So it's like, this is the woman that's at this point employing her and taking care of her and giving her the opportunity to see the world.
From the
in their travels.
From the servitude.
The servitude. Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's coming like she's very meek and she's very like she doesn't have anybody else. She's in a big world, but her own internal world is very small.
Okay, this is fair. If you were rich enough, would you hire a companion?
I mean, back in the day, that was the thing.
I don't know.
If you were an unmarried woman.
But you saw that. We saw that in Little Women too.
Yeah, that's why. If you didn't have
in Little
family
Women.
members. Yeah, remember she brought.
You're right. Yes.
The aunt.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what they did. Yeah. You have a rich family member or a friend of the family and would take on one of the young girls of the family and give them an education and an opportunity to find education, prepare them for marriage too.
Right.
And if you didn't have a family member, you just paid someone to be with you.
Okay, good to know.
It was unsafe for women to travel alone. And it kind of still is. But
okay.
Like reality. But it's interesting because I think that the main thing about this version of the main character, not Rebecca, right? She's very mousy, like you say, but I think why it kind of like feels frustrating is because this is presented as a romantic film, right? We are led to believe that these people actually really love each other, especially with the way that movie fucking ends, right? So we're led to believe that this is a love story. This whole film could have been way better if it was a horror film or if it was a thriller.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Yes.
You completely, because when you're watching this film with the understanding that you're watching a love story, you watch everything differently and everything plays differently. Think about how she acted and think about how she was and think about if this film was kind of like, maybe if this was the third season of The Haunting and it was The Haunting of Manderley and it was like an 8-episode story told by Mike Flanagan. I think then as a thriller, what this book actually is, a psychological thriller, then all of this actually wouldn't have been as frustrating and as annoying as it was.
Actually, that's a good point. So maybe the director did tell her, it's just like, this is, by the way, a thriller. This is going to be a thriller. So it's just like, oh my God, I'm always going to be scared. So anytime like, the maid comes by, it's like, you grasping your pearls. I just don't understand. Girl, what are you afraid of? I don't understand. So
I had a thought.
It could be just bad editing. Go ahead.
It could be.
Keeping with what you're saying, Nicole, I think we saw a movie almost like this, using this idea. It was just a horror movie. That movie, Ready or Not, where that young girl marries into that family, that very rich family, and then it's like, she's not one of us.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a horror.
Just
becomes a horror. So
this would have been so successful if they did that.
Yeah,
that sounds like an interesting film. I mean, that's the thing.
Worth checking out.
So, the fact that this was a remake and then they completely disregarded its proper genre is just 100% the most frustrating thing about this film.
But you could do that. There's nothing wrong with like disregarding the genre and like.
Not when the whole point is like being taken away from it, though.
Well, I think the problem here is just a misunderstanding of what the story is about.
Oh, 100%.
If someone asks you, Nicole, what is the story for the 1940 version, right? Like what? Like someone asks you, like, "Oh, what's it about?"
What would I say?
Yeah, what would you say?
Oh, it's about this woman who lives in the shadow of her current husband's ex-wife who died, and who is literally being targeted by those around her to succumb to it.
Right, and I think the reason you can give that great summary of it is because the movie does a good job of showing you all that.
Yes.
If someone asks you for this Netflix version, I think my coach, because he knows we watch movies and stuff, so he's just like, oh, I was telling about Rebecca. He's like, oh, would you recommend it? I'm like, absolutely not. He's like, why? What's it about? I'm just like, you know what? It's supposed to be about a woman who lives in this, her husband is dead, but like, I think he loves her, but I can't tell. Also, I wasn't sure 100% if Armie Hammer played the fact that like he killed her on purpose, like he did hate her. I was genuinely, I was waiting for the twist that it's just like, oh, he killed her, but then there's gonna be a twist at the end. It was like, I didn't kill her because I hated her. I killed her because I loved her too much, and now I'm gonna kill you. I was waiting for this twist to happen at the end, right? Because like it was so uneven. It was just going. It was all over the place. Yeah, and so I confused my coach. And he's just like, okay, so don't watch it. I'm just like, nah, don't bother.
Well, but to speak to your kind of like confusion about how to even explain the movie, and you're like, this movie's kind of all over the place, is because this movie has an imbalance to it. It does not want to commit to the book. The book commits to the fact that these people are really, they fucking suck, right? And that it's not a love story. This movie wants to do that, which is why, Maxim's tortured and he's cold and he's living with trauma and she's just a pushover and all this stuff. But then it wants it to also be a love story, which is why it ends like it's fucking 50 Shades of Grey, right? Where it's just like, why is this movie ending with this sex scene? Why are they showing that it's almost like this weird, like sexual tortured relationship? When
he's choking her?
Yeah.
And she's looking at herself in the mirror?
Terrible. And so it's just like, you're not committing to the book, and now you're confusing your viewers as to what to take away from it. What is this about? What am I like? Yeah, what are you trying to say? Yeah, and the fact that they introduced that whole sexual element just angers me.
Again, I don't know. I don't disagree with you because of its setting. If you modernize the story and you were still trying to tell something about sex, then maybe, but they wouldn't. It was just like kind of just like, yeah, there was nothing to be told.
It was halfway between a modern retelling and halfway between a faithful adaptation. I'm going to say it right now. This film was so not needed because it couldn't make up its mind about how it wanted to be, and it did not add anything to Rebecca. What it did add, like these weird sexual elements to it, was completely unnecessary and completely took away from the actually really good, like subtext of Rebecca.
Yeah.
So no, this movie was not needed. Although it was interesting that in this film, Mrs. Danvers burns Manderley, but then she kills herself.
Yes.
In the book, sorry, now I'm getting confused. She gets away with it. She runs away and she's never seen again. I don't know why they added that element. I mean, other than the fact that now that Maxim and his wife have a happy ending, why does Mrs. Danvers have to kill herself? I don't know why they did that. There felt like no retribution for it. I actually would have been happier if she got away with it because life is unfair and that's how shit works, And like, this is, at the end of the day, a tragedy.
Right. So, go ahead, Eddie. I'll let you go.
Because then I think what wasn't maybe done well was the element of grief here.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
And also that we know Rebecca herself by the black hole that she has left behind in that whole manner in people's lives. Like, it's like, this is a giant crate in the middle of us emotionally and mentally. And the new wife, the young wife now is walking into this and she's figuring things out by the emptiness of things.
Yeah.
By the emptiness of things. So I actually like that idea. But what wasn't done, I would have liked more would have been the intensity of grief coming from, what's her name?
Not Rebecca?
No.
Mrs. Danvers.
Mrs. Danvers.
Mrs. Danvers. Ms. Danvers? I guess she wasn't married.
I think she's Mrs. Danvers, but her husband could be dead. No, 100%. But I also think, do you guys feel like some things were like on the nose too, where it was just like the movie was kind of screaming it to me? Like, for instance, that dream sequence where everyone's just looking at her going, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
I kind of like, I was on my phone during that scene. I was just like, I can't with this movie.
Yeah.
It was a little bit too on the, yeah, you're right. It was on the nose. And I think at a certain point, me as a viewer, I'm just like kind of checking out because I'm just like, ugh, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of those moments. But yeah, it was on the nose. I think the other one that's on the nose because they were trying to show his grief, how it manifests through him sleepwalking, but there was no payoff to that, by the way, guys, right? We can agree on that.
Payoff.
No payoff at all. Also, if he hated her, why is he sleepwalking to her bedroom?
You
know what I mean?
her again.
I guess. Like, it made no sense.
I'm assuming just guilt. Just sheer guilt that he's experiencing.
It could be guilt, but
no,
but then it doesn't.
He
even
wasn't
come
remorseful.
through.
He never was remorseful. He was always hiding the fact. I don't know. That's why this is on Armie Hammer's performance, and I'm going to also blame direction and writing. I just wasn't sure. This is where I was just saying, it's like, all right, maybe there's going to be a twist that, like, he is lying here. Like, maybe he did kill her in cold blood, like, for the fun of it, and he's going to kill her, not Rebecca, too. So, I was just a little very confused and stuff.
I still don't understand how he was trapped in this marriage.
Yeah.
I don't buy it. Like her saying, well, I'm going to marry you and I'll play the wife, but I'm doing my things on the side. And you can't divorce me, because of the scandal. And okay, but it's just like, but why not?
Because of that's like a classic.
Why not?
That's a classic thing,
I feel really usually too. It's the woman that suffers in the divorce than the man.
I think, and that's why
in that time period.
No, and I think that's the reversal here is why this book is actually so beloved. And Laurence Olivier is able to play that he did in fact love her, but like she was hurting him. But he also then was stuck because it's like, we're married and now I have this scandal on my hand and I cannot. He played it to great effect. Armie Hammer did not do that, despite the fact that they almost had the same identical speeches.
Yeah.
Right. And that's more on Armie Hammer and direction than it was on the script, because like those scenes are basically the same script. Laurence Olivier is able to kind of show you that pain that he was in and like why he couldn't go through it. Armie Hammer wasn't able to express it as well.
And maybe both of these films didn't do a good job of showing kind of like how much they couldn't get divorced and how much it would have like fucked up the fact that like people would have looked down on them and stuff, like that was very much a thing. And that probably could have been played up more.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And
I agree.
And it's almost her supernatural ability to lure men. And men to be entangled in relationship with her. And even though they know that I'm not the only one, I'm just a series of other men,
Seriously.
That
she even played her first cousin.
So, it's just like all these things. It's just like, and they were like, yeah, I love her, or I was so in lust with her. I just didn't care. Any moment I got with her. Was a pearl.
She had really strong pheromones. Yeah.
Well, as RuPaul would say, her pussy was on fire.
Oh, yeah.
But wait, I need to complain one more thing about Lily James. Well, not Rebecca here, right? So there was a sequence that she had. This is not in the first one, where she speeds off after the trial to try to delete or find out if Rebecca was in fact pregnant, because that's what like the entire trial hinged upon, right? If she was in fact pregnant and they didn't know who the father was, that gives motive for why Maxim would kill her.
Yes.
Right? So she goes out of her way to fires Mrs. Danvers right there.
Definitely, if she was pregnant, that the whole suicide thing would be out the window.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's what that's the motive, right? That's like what the investigation is hinging on. But she fires Mrs. Danvers at that moment. It's a very awkward moment because just like, why are you firing her now? Like, why haven't you fired her yet? Not Rebecca. And so she finds out the address of the doctor, speeds her way through, and this is where I'm talking about, where I mentioned that she's such a passive character that even when she does something active, nothing happens. Because when she goes there, she's able to find the paperwork that exonerates him. And when she does, nothing happens. Nothing changes. Like, the story goes the same way it would have gone had it been just told the way it happened in the original movie.
Yeah.
So it's just like, there was, again, no payoff here. All we got to see was her hearing firsthand from the doctor and the police is just like, okay, yeah, she was dying of cancer. But again, nothing, she didn't do anything. Like, if she hadn't gone, the story doesn't change. Because the police would have found the paperwork and then it would have been exonerated.
Yeah, it's almost a waste of a scene.
Oh, yeah, it was. And also, this is more a complaint on I just don't think that that's how it works, where like he now gets released. There's a trial, so you have to go before the judge and like say, it's just like, we're going to drop these charges.
Yeah, seriously.
They don't just let him go that night. That's just me just now nitpicking it. But that was just one of those scenes where I'm just like, what? This movie doesn't know what it's doing.
It really doesn't. It doesn't commit to anything. It doesn't commit to how it wants to adapt to the film. And here's an example of me nitpicking and me being upset with how disappointed I was with this. you mentioned that when they did the flashback in the 1940 Hitchcock film, you know, you're like, oh no, are we going to see this? But then it was just kind of like this beautiful camera work that was conveying the memories.
Like the motions, literally, what he's saying is happening, like the camera's following it, but there's no one there. Brilliant.
Great. And then it's also like, we have to live in the shadow of Rebecca. Don't show Rebecca. Mm-hmm. We see her body floating in the ocean in this film.
Do we?
Yeah, we do. There's like a moment where you like see it.
Oh, you're right. You also see her like in the house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why would you show Rebecca? Why would you show Rebecca? The whole point of it being effective is that we never see her.
Yeah.
No, so annoying.
But we never see the face, right?
We never saw the face.
We never saw the face. Because in the new one too, we also see the body.
It's still, to me, that's like, I don't want to see any inch of her, man.
No, I agree with you, right? Because it also implies like a ghost story too.
Yes.
Where, like in a sense, this is very much supposed to be a ghost story, but like a real life ghost story where it's just like the past is always haunting us, right? That's like a real life shit that just happens in the real world. It's not a physical ghost. She's seeing now a physical manifestation. It might, of course, it's in her head, sure, but like she's still seeing it, and we as the audience are seeing it, and therefore it's just kind of diminishing the impact of realism here.
100%. This should have been the third season of The Haunting.
And it also plays, being non-Rebecca, also plays with your head, never seeing any image or never seeing any evidence of her besides all the things that she's left behind, because you create this goddess in your head that you compare yourself to.
True, yeah.
Which fucks you up even more.
Yeah, hearsay is even worse.
Because you know, it's like, this is what I imagine from the effect of, from what the effect she has left on others. There's no way I can ever live up to this. It's no way.
Actually, this is my favorite scene from both movies is always when not Rebecca asks the house manager of just like, can you please be honest with me and just tell me, was she beautiful? And it's just like, she was the most beautiful creature I've ever seen. It's like, well, thank you. I'm right here, but okay, cool. Yeah. Like, it's so mean.
It is, yeah.
There's just no right answer for that, Wood.
Seriously.
Yeah, just a huge misfire. So, Nicole, I see you already answered, was this movie needed?
Absolutely not. Nobody asked for it, first of all.
I didn't.
No, it was.
Agreed.
If I wanted it, I did not get it. I don't think anyone got what they wanted. What about you?
I don't think this movie was needed at all. If anything, the only thing that was needed was for me to like actually, because I never had seen Rebecca, right? The Alfred Hitchcock. Aww. So it gave me a chance to like check it out and be like, oh my God, this is what superior filmmaking is like. I forgot.
Aww.
You know what's funny about this movie? So you know how Rebecca is the story of a woman trapped living under the shadow of the previous wife?
Yes.
This is a movie that's just that, right? This is a movie that's living in the shadow of Alfred Hitchcock's work, and it's just like, why? I don't know. I would not want to ever remake a Alfred Hitchcock movie because it's just like,
I mean, Gus Van Sant did that with Psycho, and
I only seen half of that remake and stuff, and I didn't care.
The only reason why it's interesting is because of how like shot for shot they did it, but then everything within the shot feels so different.
But I also don't like the actor. What was his name? The guy who played Psycho?
Was it Vince Vaughn?
Vince Vaughn. Yeah, it's Vince Vaughn. I don't like Vince Vaughn.
But they were also like directed to be like cold and monotone and stuff. So it's interesting, but it doesn't work.
Well, Anne Heche is always cold and monotone, I feel. So.
Yeah. But I think that's a really good point. This movie does live in the shadow of those who at least know that there is a 1940 Hitchcock film, and it definitely, I would be a Miss Danvers about it.
Yeah.
I am a Mrs. Danvers about it.
It's just kind of, I think it's a wasted opportunity because you can always make the argument that this isn't a remake of the Hitchcock movie. This is another adaptation of the book. Fair, but I don't know. It's still it was a miss no matter what though at the end of the day. So it doesn't matter, and you're always going to get compared to the previous movie, at least on this podcast.
Yeah.
So that's where
that's kind of what we do. Yeah.
So not needed in my opinion.
Oh, we're missing one thing.
Oh, what are we missing, Eddie?
The character no one ever talks about.
Who?
The house.
Manderley itself.
Oh, the house itself. Okay. So this is my thought on the house. The house is the container of all the memories of generations of this family, right? Generations that weigh on this poor man's shoulders. Okay. In the book, it's like after the house is destroyed, he mentally goes like suffers like a mental breakdown.
Oh, is that what happens? He goes crazy because the house burns down?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You know, that kind of thing. And then in Alfred Hitchcock's version, in the movie, we don't know what happens. It's just like the house burns down and then the movie's over. Right. That kind of thing. But in the remake, when the house bursts down, it's like he's free. Like he's no longer bonded by all the expectations of all the generations before him.
Oh, okay.
He no longer has the weight of the manor and all his dark secrets and all the expectations on him.
True.
And now that is let go.
So you're saying...
So Rebecca's death, as well as the death of the house, is a possibility of giving him freedom.
So you're saying that might be the only thing that might be salvageable in this movie. Because I think that's an interesting read. I think that makes sense. Does it redeem? I don't think it redeems the movie, but it would technically redeem at least that kind. It gives us, outside of the performance from...
Because now in the ending, it's now looking for a new home together.
But they were too sexual, though. They didn't look like... I guess there was no mourning and stuff on his end.
Yeah.
But would there be? I guess not. Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good read. I like it.
And could be true for the 1941 because the 1941 begins with narration and all of these shots of the place. You know, the road with we're on the road leading to it, and then we see it, and then it ends with the flames of it coming down, right? So it is kind of like this phoenix rising from the ashes in a weird way. But it makes me even sadder of the opportunity missed for the 2021, and even more convinced that had this been a Mike Flanagan series of The Haunting of Manderley Mansion, it would have been really, really cool to see.
I think that would have been because Mike Flanagan probably would have played up. You could have played up the ghost literally.
Yes.
And
yes, you could.
That's fine. I don't mind that. Like as long as you're giving me like an actual good story. And I think Mike Flanagan does know how to do that.
Yeah, because then it's like am I having a nervous breakdown? Right. Like that's the question here, and it's like when and total gaslighting moments. Everybody's telling you everything's okay. No, and you're like, no, this is fucking crazy. This is there's a ghost here, or there's this like this presence.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. Before we go, I do want to do a lightning round.
Oh, right, yeah.
I think this one merits a lightning round, so let's do it. Lightning round time.
Lightning round.
Okay. Let's see. Which Maxim do you like better?
Oh, no, come on. That's an easy one. Oh, Laurence Olivier.
100%, yeah. Like,
Yeah,
no
Laurence
hammer. And which Mrs. Danvers do you like better?
The new Mrs. Danvers.
No way.
I go with the new... I actually like the new Mrs. Danvers a little better. A couple of reasons. She scares me. She was scary. She was scary.
Judith Anderson wasn't scary?
Not as much. I think she played it like the tragic love-lorn character lesbian thing, which is fine. But like this one was much... I think the new Mrs. Danvers was sinister. Right? And I think the sinisterness kind of... I prefer the maternal, the mother-daughter kind of relationship. It didn't feel as... maybe me as a homosexual doesn't feel like as like kill the
insulting.
Gays.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So
I still think Judith Anderson did a good job. I don't know.
I don't know. I think she did a great job. I think even watching it, I think I preferred the performance from the new Mrs. Danvers.
Okay.
She was so biting, and she was just so. So I'm assuming you picked the old one.
Yes, no, the original definitely.
Okay,
just also because of me knowing this film for so long and having that idea and some of those scenes of Mrs. Danvers and all of her evilness is just really impactful. And I'm going to remember it, whereas I'm going to forget about this new Rebecca in like 5 days.
Fair. I had to struggle to remember this since I watched it.
Yeah.
So
now what about not Rebecca?
I'm going to go with Janet Leigh? No, that's not right.
Joan Fontaine. Janet Leigh is the star of Psycho, which is impressive.
Yeah, that you wouldn't even know that.
We were talking about Psycho, sorry. Joan Fontaine. Yeah, I'm going to go with Joan Fontaine. She was I think she was just a stronger character, and she just gave a stronger performance.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lily James.
I'm just gonna go. Yeah, I'm gonna go with her too, because I think everything about the fact that this was a film that came out in 1940, I think just does better for the story. Like, she was just way more convincing and stuff because she was, alive in the time period where this existed and whatnot. So yeah, I definitely would pick her as well.
Yeah.
And
then
yeah.
Yeah, that would be it. I would say the only other character that I could think of was there were a few characters, but
we won't go that deep.
Fine, let's not go that deep. It's a shame, Rebecca is hard to find online. It lives on YouTube right now, but it's not going to be a high def version, so you guys don't mind pixelation. But I couldn't find it on any streaming service.
Yeah, it's not one of those films that like everyone's dying to watch, so that doesn't surprise me.
Which is a shame. I think it's worth checking out.
It definitely is worth checking out. The original, the 1940.
The original, the 1940, not the Netflix one. If you've seen the Netflix one and you disagree with me, I will fight you because I question then your judgment
seriously.
of film.
You should come at us with your opinions on it, though, and you can email us, remakes-reboots-revivals@gmail.com. We're active on Instagram at Remakes Reboots Revivals, Facebook, facebook.com/remakes-reboots-revivals, and a Twitter that Rolando himself is active on. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Remakes Podcast, where I'm dishing all the tea on Tom and Jerry's trailer and the new pictures from the new Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which may be a hard convincing to do if it ends up coming out, but I think it might merit some watching.
Yes, and we actually have a lot to talk about with stuff that is coming out soon. So
yes, indeed we do. But I think that's where we're gonna leave it on this one. It was I guess all I had to say is just like check out, if you can find it, check out the original Rebecca.
Watch more older films. You'll be surprised at how much you enjoy them.
Yes, that's literally what I tell my friends all the time. Doing this podcast. Oh man. All right. But that's all she wrote on this one. So with that said, stay an original.